Hello boys and girls, it's time for another story about Percy. Now do you remember that I said there were 4 seasons in the year, and we started with winter, with that snowy night when all the animals were so cold they all came to Percy's hut. Then we went to spring, where Percy and all those lovely yellow daffodils were there in all the pictures, and they went into a maze, which is like a puzzle with lots of paths, and Percy pretended to be the lion bench. Do you remember that? And then the little bunny did lots of jumps. That was in the summer, and she fell down the well, and all the animals were trying to pull her out, but she was out already. Do you remember that? So now we come to the 4th season, and that is, what comes after summer? Autumn. And the Americans call autumn fall because all the leaves of the trees fall down. So now it's autumn, and this is the last story that we have. And it is called After the Storm. So there are often storms in the autumn. Percy the park keeper couldn't sleep. Outside his hut, a great storm was raging with thunder and lightning and pouring rain. Percy wasn't frightened by the thunder, and he loved to watch the lightning as it lit up the whole park. He didn't even mind the rain. But there was one thing that Percy didn't like. He didn't like the wind. It blew down fences in the park and ripped branches off the trees. He didn't like it one bit. Oh dear, he sighed as he watched from his window. The wind tugged at the trees, making them creak and groan. It looks like I'm going to be busy tomorrow. He pulled his pillow over his head and tried to get to sleep. And you can see Percy looking out of his window with all the leaves blowing by. That's why it's called fall. Percy was up early in the morning. The wind had stopped and the sky was clear. Percy loaded up his wheelbarrow with all the things he would need to make repairs and clear up after the storm. Then he set off to inspect the damage. He felt happy as he took deep breaths of fresh, clean air. That's what he did. Perhaps the damage wouldn't be too bad, but he was wrong. Something dreadful had happened. A great big oak tree that had stood by itself on top of a little hill had been blown over by the storm. The giant tree had been one of Percy's favourites. Now it looked very sad, lying on its side with its mass of tangly roots sticking up into the air. But it wasn't just one of Percy's favourite trees. Some of Percy's animal friends lived there. Now their homes were wrecked. Percy hurried up to the fallen tree. The animals were gathered by the tree, looking cross and unhappy. When they saw Percy, everyone started talking at once. Percy sat down with his friends and listened as they told him how the storm had brought down the great tree. "And now we have nowhere to live," said the badger. "Some of us lived in the tree and some of us lived under it, but we're all homeless now." Some of the rabbits looked close to tears, and the fox was very sniffy. Percy passed him his handkerchief, and the fox blew his nose. Can you see all those little animals sitting there, very fed up? And behind the three rabbits who are leaning against a log, there's the owl with a little mole in front of him, and a mouse beside him, and a pigeon. Then there's a squirrel, and there are two little mice sitting on those twigs and branches. Oh dear, poor animals. Percy stood up. "We'll just have to find you somewhere else to live," he said. "Come on, everybody, jump into my wheelbarrow." The animals felt better now that Percy was with them. First he took them to the pine wood, but nobody wanted to live there. "Too dark," squeaked the mice. "Too gloomy," said the hedgehog. So Percy took them to the shrubbery, but nobody wanted to live in the shrubbery either. "No big trees," complained the squirrels. "No big roots," moaned the rabbits. "Never mind," said Percy, "we'll try across the stream." Percy began to push the heavy wheelbarrow over a little bridge that crossed the stream. But as he got to the middle of the bridge, two things happened. Percy stumbled, that means he almost fell, and the wheelbarrow decided to see what it would be like to be a boat. Splash! Oh, can you see them all falling into the water? Suddenly Percy and his friends found themselves drifting downstream to where the stream opened out onto a lake. Percy stood up and looked around. "We'll have to paddle back to the shore," he said. But then something caught his eye. "No, wait," said Percy. "Let's paddle across to the other side of the lake. I have an idea." The animals looked puzzled. What was Percy up to? Slowly they paddled the wheelbarrow across the lake. Can you see the little duck looking at them? And on the wheelbarrow's wheel, there's a little mouse that's running on the wheel. "Here we are," said Percy. The squirrels had jumped to shore and tied up the wheelbarrow to the roots of an enormous hollow tree that grew by the water's edge. Oh, that is an enormous tree, isn't it? "Now this is my plan," said Percy. Everyone gathered round as Percy explained his idea. "Is everybody clear?" Everybody nodded. "Then let's get to work." Now before they get to work, let's just have a look at the picture with all of the animals listening to Percy's plan. And can you see that little tiny mouse on Percy's hat? There's always a little mouse on his hat, isn't there? And up in the tree above Percy, there's a robin. Can you see the robin with the red breast? And a sparrow. And a little black and white bird, might be a baby magpie. And all the little animals have got their arms around each other, just as Percy has got his arms around the fox and the badger. They began by unloading all Percy's tools and the planks of wood from the wheelbarrow. Then Percy explained exactly what he wanted each one to do. He showed the badger how to use a saw, and he showed the squirrels how to knock in nails. And there's the fox with the drill. The fox drilled holes and the rabbit screwed in screws. The mice were kept busy fetching and carrying for everyone else. And there they are, carrying some pliers. Can you see them? And another little mouse running behind with some nails. At lunchtime, they took a short break to share some of Percy's peanut butter sandwiches. Then they got busy again. At long last, their work was finished. A very tired Percy stood back to admire their work. Now the squirrels had a brand new home, and so did the mice. The rabbits had a new home, and so did the badger, and the fox, and the hedgehog. In fact, every one of Percy's friends had a fine new place to live in that lovely old tree. "Well done, everybody," said Percy. "This is the best tree house I've ever seen." "What about you, Percy?" called the badger. "Aren't you going to join us?" Percy smiled. "I think I'll stick to my old hut," he said. "Besides," said Percy, taking an acorn out of his pocket, "I still have one job left to do back at the little hill." And what do you think he's going to do? I think he's going to plant that acorn, and the acorn will grow into a great big oak tree. The end.